we're hoping we have somebody who might be able to help us, enlighten us on that. I want to welcome you to the University of Mary Washington and the Center for Economic Development. We are here for education, for consulting, for convening, and for industry information that you might need to support your businesses. And one of the things that makes things happen are these people up here, because if any of y'all read my article in the Chamber newsletter, I guess it was last month, it was all about team. And this is really your A team right here. These people you really want to get connected with. You want to get to know these folks, what they can do for your companies and help you out. And that's it. Basically, come on in. Got a chair right here. One little piece here, everybody's got a bottle of water in their chair, so if you need to make a quick exit, it's out to the right. There's one door on the right and the second door on the right. They're going to be your rooms of choice. So we want to introduce our distinguished moderator today, who actually doesn't require a whole lot of introduction. He, as you know, he sits on the Armed Services Committee as well as the Natural Resources Committee. You know, somebody from Northern Net getting hunting and fishing in there.
It's a good thing.
Kind of an interesting way of pulling it all together. But I think the real reason he's here today is because he has a real personal connection to business. It's a family situation for him.
Yes.
His son is quite a successful entrepreneur, and he can tell you about those stories and what have you. But if he's not on small business, then he's in trouble at home.
That's right.
So anyway, I'm going to get out of the way and would like to introduce the Honorable Congressman Rob Wittman.
Well, Brian, thank you so much, and good morning.
Good morning.
Gosh, what a great opportunity. Brian, thank you again, and thank you so much for the great work the University of Mary Washington Small Business Development Center does. Another great asset for our region and all the things that they do to bring people together. It's an extraordinary opportunity for all of us to look at what can we do to help identify opportunities. What can we do, too, to make sure that we chart paths for success, not only for businesses, but for folks in our minority communities that have many times very innovative and thoughtful ideas, but many times don't know the pathway to be able to make those thoughts and ideas successful. And I think that's really the key. It's how do you bring together this plethora of resources that are out there to make sure people know, well, how do I take this and turn it into a successful business? Or how do I take what I started as a business and make it even more successful? How do I create those networks? How do I connect with people? How do I put together things like a business plan? How do I make sure that I do everything possible to assure that you're making the most of your businesses? You know, we have a lot of small businesses out there. A number of them fail. And the small business failures are not because the idea wasn't a good idea or because the business itself wasn't conceptually the right thing. It was because of the other mechanics that go into keeping a business going. Just the basic elements of, you know, a spreadsheet, a balance sheet to make sure what goes in equals to what's going out and making sure that you're managing those things. All those things are incredibly important. And there are lots of opportunities out there, I believe, for us to do even more. You know, we have a great panel of experts today that have a great background in working with people in the minority communities on how to make sure we chart paths to success for each and every one of them. And that, I think is the key. And it's making sure that you have not only folks there that can give the information, but also folks that are mentors or navigators, helping you kind of get through the system. Because many times it's not only having the technical knowledge, but many times it's about relationships. It's about who do you know? How do I get to others? How do I get to know people in the community? How do I make sure that those folks go, oh, do you know what so-and-so is doing in their business? Or helping to make those additional connections there. Those things are all incredibly important. The neat thing about it is in the first district, we have an incredible amount of resources and an incredible number of organizations that do a miraculous job in networking and getting people together and saying, hey, what can we do to help you? You know, if you're a business that's having this challenge, I know another business that's had the same challenge. I want to connect you with them so they can tell you what they did to chart the path to success. So I think those things are incredibly important. In the 1st Congressional District, we have a Unity Diversity Council where we bring people together from a variety of different backgrounds And we address a number of different issues, whether it's things like broadband, which we addressed this past month, or whether we address things like business development, where we had Mr. Wade from the United States Chamber of Commerce. And his job at the United States Chamber of Commerce is to focus on minority small businesses. How do we make sure that we are doing everything we can on a national level? How do we make sure that policy that's being adopted in Washington is reflective of the needs of minority small businesses and reflective of the needs of folks in the minority community that want to start a business? How do we make sure that state policies and state laws are reflective of that? How do we make sure localities are doing what they need to do to make sure that they are mindful of the unique challenges that the minority community faces and that minority businesses face and what they have in the path ahead? And we're also honored to have leaders in the community like Bishop Lyle Dukes, who's the former chairman of the Prince William County Chamber of Commerce, who has both the experience there in the spiritual community, another great area of networking, and where he's actually taken that into his church and said, listen, in our church, we're going to have conduits for our church members to understand more about business, understand more about paths to success. It's those types of innovative ways of thinking that is critically important for others to understand, and again, a great opportunity through networking to make sure that those things happen. So I want to make sure that we are using the ideas that have come to us from folks like Rick Wade from the U.S. Chamber, and seeing the things that they do. They have what's called an equal opportunity initiative, where they're looking across the nation about how to, again, bring folks together and how to make sure, too, that all the assets that are out there are in the hands of minority businesses and the minority communities, and then make sure, too, that we use the knowledge, skills, and abilities of folks in those communities to identify where are the challenges and what's the reality of those challenges. You know, a lot of times you can talk about those things conceptually and go, well, you know, access to capital is a big thing. Well, what is it about access to capital? You know, what's the unique element of access to capital? Is it what you get back from a bank when you say, hey, I need a business loan, and they say, sorry, no, we're not going to give you one. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, I'm getting a no. It's why the no? What's behind saying, no, you're not going to get this? And then looking at what's the alternative? How do you go to other places to get capital? And that's one of many, many different areas that I think are critically important for us to address. You know, we know that our small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Every big business started as a small business. So we want to make sure we're doing that. It is the fastest growing part of our economy, both jobs and in the economic output. So I'm excited about today. You know, we continue on this theme of making sure that we're doing everything we can to get paths for success for as many people as we can in the community. I want to make sure if somebody starts a small business that their path to success is out there surrounded by people that are there to help them along the way. And again, it can be arduous, it can be challenging, it can be intimidating. We want to make sure we're addressing all of those situations. So today is a great opportunity to do that. I want to take a moment to introduce our panel. We have an extraordinary panel today. We have with us Conway Haskins, who serves as the co-chair of the Professional Development Committee on Virginia Economic Developers Association. They're right here in front row. Conway, thanks so much. Susan Ball, who's the director of University of Mary Washington Small Business Development Center. We have Carl Knobloch he's the district director of the Virginia Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Joseph Stefano, president of Rappahannock Rappahannock Economic Development Corporation. I want to say
it's as hard as my last name.
Hey, the electric co-op does great, but the economic co-op does a great job too. So, Jennifer Mayton, who's the agency interim director of the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. Jackie Davis, the executive director of the Bay Consortium Workforce Development Board. Bay Consortium does a great job. We appreciate all of their efforts. Wayne Waldrop, president of Virginia Community Capital, and Michelle Caldwell-Thompson, Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. Michelle, thank you. So we have a great panel today. We appreciate all the great efforts that are going to be going on. And listen, what I'd like to do is to open the floor to our panelists. Each of them have an area of expertise and things that they're working on that they want to be able to share with you. So Conway, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Congressman. Really happy to be here.
Thank you.
Really happy to be here with the folks in your district and partners like Brian and others, and folks on the panel whom I work with. I'm here representing my day job as the Director of Entrepreneurial Ecosystems with the Center for Innovative Technology, which is Virginia's innovation agency. We are part of the Commerce and Trade Secretariat, and we have, and I'm actually new to the position. I started June 1, and we have a variety of programs to support entrepreneurs and innovators across the spectrum. But in particular, over the last few years, we've put a priority on serving underrepresented entrepreneurs and underrepresented communities. And so we do that through a variety of ways, primarily through funding, through grants, through lending programs, and through investment programs. And I'll just highlight a couple of those if it's not a problem. First is our investments division. That's what a lot of folks, particularly in the technology sector, know us for our GAP Fund program, which is essentially a seed stage, early stage investment fund that makes equity investments in high potential Virginia startups, particularly in the technology sector, life sciences, clean tech, which is kind of developing, but other companies that have a potential growth trajectory. And that program has been really successful over the last 30 years, and really has been a lot of times the first institutional investor, the first organizational investor in a lot of our startups. The great thing about the investments team is that a few years ago, as part of the effort by the Northern administration, that team was tagged with managing what's called the Virginia Founders Fund, which is an investment fund that is specifically designed to invest equity investments in underserved communities, startups from underserved communities, and minority-owned startups. And that fund will be particularly focusing on African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian American, other entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, to really help bridge the gaps that folks find, particularly in the investment side. There's also going to be a fund that is part of that that's going to be targeting rural areas to find those startups that are really promising, but maybe not necessarily in Tyson's Corner, or not necessarily in Richmond, kind of out and about, but are doing really great work and could grow and achieve. Another program that we have is through our commercialization division, and that they actually make a number of grants to inventors and innovators to really see how you can commercialize those technologies and those inventions. They help with product development. They help with things like marketing, pilot testing, testing your product out to see if there's a market for it, to see and what the market could be and what the market opportunities could be. And so those folks really work closely with a lot of our inventors, other innovative folks across the Commonwealth, and they prioritize working with minority communities and other innovators of color, women innovators, to make sure that they're tapped into these networks. And then there's our Strategic Initiatives Division, which works with companies and communities on things like the Smart Communities Initiative, or the test bed, which is actually right here in this region, and also other things like the unmanned systems, which are the development of our drone technologies, development of our unmanned systems technologies as a sector, to make that a priority for the Commonwealth. And then finally, there's my division, which is the Ecosystems Division, which is new. We were created last year as part of the revamp of innovation in Virginia. And what we do is work with regional and community partners to make sure that the ecosystems, that the regions, the communities are supportive of entrepreneurs and of innovators. And we're doing a number of things, particularly around that navigator concept that the Congressman talked about, to just really help making sure that we can connect entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs of color, female entrepreneurs, and those who need resources and access, people connect those resources. So that's why we work with folks like the panelists here, and we can find that information pretty easy. It's CIT.org is our website, and you'll be able to find all of our information there. And feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help and connect you to what our resources are and to other resources as well.
Conway, thank you. And listen, thanks for what you're doing too. I love seeing CIT kind of morph and change and adapt to the challenges that are out there. And as you said, critical element there, what I call a connector, is to make sure, as you said, that concept of navigation. Many times people have the great idea, but they don't have sometimes the other business acumen necessary to kind of put that great concept or idea together and put it into a business plan and make it work. What you all are doing there creates, again, that path for success for our businesses out there. So we appreciate that. So, Susan, I'm going to turn it over to you and the great job you're doing here at UMW and all the things that are happening in Small Business Development Center.
Well, thank you. And I feel like Congressman Wittman kind of told you what we do a lot. And we have our sign back here. You can see. So the University of Mary Washington Small Business Development Center covers planning districts 16, 17, 18, which is kind of the greater Fredericksburg area, Northern Neck, and Middle Peninsula. We have many more clients from Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsy than we do from King George, Caroline, and the Middle Peninsula. So one of our big challenges is how to bring more entrepreneurship into the rural areas. And so we've been trying to do that through a startup high school program, which Joy Corpus started and has run for many years. And sadly, she just retired, so now we have to revamp. But and going into the high schools and really helping them develop an idea and the thought that they can grow up to be an entrepreneur and they can add to their community, and looking to see what is valuable and needed in their community. We help entrepreneurs at all levels, from I think I have an idea that I want to investigate wide variety of clients. We actually, for this year, we're at 42% of clients that are white, and 44, and 58% are minority clients. Our loans have gone to Asian and Hispanic clients so far this year, 98% of the dollar value of our loans. We're hoping to get more loans in, of course, but we are just happy to help people, particularly when they're looking for a loan. When a lot of our bankers, clients are such as by bankers like Terry Toasty, who say, you need a business plan. You need to go see Susan. We really can help you with our business owners with business plans, with cash flow forecasts, which help you analyze whether you can be successful or not. We have a research network at University of Texas, El Paso, and we have IBIS World Reports. We have our own databases of research. So we can be a great resource in that. We will also proofread your business plan and make sure that it reads well and work with you on that. We also work with CIT in a non-COVID time. We have them in every year to share what they do. We help with a lot of government contractors, and 35% of our clients are veterans or veteran spouses. Of course, we're well placed for that. So we help with registering to do business with state and federal government. We help with all the certifications, whether that's 8A or HubZone, small women and minority, and walk you through that. And then we have a great relationship with SBSD. They provide us a consultant on a regular basis, and also with Virginia PTAC, who provides us with a consultant who's planning to be here 20 hours a week starting next month. That can really help you learn to navigate how to sell to the federal or state government. We also work with the ICAP program, which is a Virginia SBDC program, to help you analyze the potential of your new technology. They use the lean startup methodology, and their mentors are people who have invented things and have been successful, and that's a really great program. And most of our stuff is free. All consulting and is free, and training is either free or very low cost.
Susan, thanks. And I think you bring up several very important points I want to emphasize, and that is many times people don't know the glide path, what I call the access to capital.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, hey, I've got this great idea, and they have a piece of their plan that can be wildly successful, but it's a matter of putting the other pieces together, making sure they have that startup capital. So thank you for what you do to make sure that you help them on that path. You look at their business plans and say, yes, this is something you can go to a lender and say, you're going to be, at least have a good chance for success with that. Another area that I think too is critically important, that is there's an unbelievable amount of innovation and creation in the minds of our youth today, and how they think about the world. They think about it in a very different way than we do. I know my grandson, who is just miraculous with electronic devices. It's so intuitive with them, and how he thinks about things is different than I could ever wrap my brain around. But it's that sort of innovation and creation that I know is going to chart the next path to success for the generation to come. So the question then becomes too is, how do we make sure that we take those innovative ideas and find ways for them to get into a business? And listen, and even very young people, and I think it's critical to not just wait until somebody graduates from high school, because I've heard from a lot of young folks that have some pretty innovative ideas, and these are young kids. These are kids that are getting into middle school, getting into high school. So doing all we can to kind of cultivate those ideas and get them to think, not just on the creative and innovative side, but get them to think about, well, how would I put this together as a business? And that, I think, too, is something that's incredibly important, especially in rural areas. And to kind of think outside the box, because many things that we think, well, that's not, the normal concept of a business actually can be a business, especially as we look at areas like the Northern Middle Peninsula that are rich in natural resources. But many times the natural resource itself has a base value, and the way you can get more out of it is to do value added. So you take that basic component and say, well, I'm going to add some value to it, and then can be able to market it, or can develop a technology that actually adds value itself to the resource. So all those things, I think, are incredibly important in the region. I appreciate what you do here at UMW with Small Business Development Center, and helping cultivate those areas and making sure we're doing all that's necessary. Incredibly important work. So thanks. next is Carl Nowak. Carl is with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Has done a great job, very, very involved in the district here, works with our office constantly about making sure that people understand what's available for them, helping them through the process. And Carl, I know that you probably spent many sleepless nights as you helped roll out the PPP program. That was
Still doing.
I know, that's right. But you know what? That was incredibly important to folks and what they needed for their businesses. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Carl Nowak, District Director here at Small Business.
Okay, thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you.
And to say the Small Business Administration, that rolls off everybody's tongue, SBA now today. A year ago, this is how we were known. CIT ran one of our grants for innovation. The SBDC is funded partially by us. RECO 504 program run by us. Virginia Community Capital does our 7A program. They all do great jobs. And that's what nobody really knew. We were actually funneled out. And then now all of a sudden the pandemic hits. Now we're in the forefront. Creating policy and with the economic injury disaster loan, which we've always had for years, to deal with disasters, which you just had one up in the Northern Neck last night.
Yes.
Those are the type of things we get involved on a daily basis, natural disasters, and Congress had to make changes to say the pandemic was actually a disaster. Otherwise, we couldn't use our program. And so until they did that, we couldn't do anything. So when they did that, that was actually the first program that rolled out. And to give you an idea, think about it. There's 30 million businesses in the country. We have 17 million applications. We're one of the smallest agencies in the country. We have 17 million applications. We had over 9 million payroll protection program applications. That just tells you the impact the pandemic did nationwide. And we learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes. We had terrible customer service, I will admit that. And we tried at the local level to do damage control with everything as much as possible. And we're still dealing with it. Payroll protections moving forward. We're making changes. I think the one thing the pandemic has taught us is to start thinking more like the private sector. So we're actually streamlining a lot of things, and those things that we're streamlining are actually we're going to start carrying over into our other programs to make us more efficient. Because we realize from the pandemic, you have to be able to move quickly. And so that's what we've been doing. So as things have gotten more complicated, we've literally been making changes through it. And so we had payroll protection, which is a very successful program. 3 rounds of that. We have the restaurant revitalization, which unfortunately there was not enough money allocated to it. And we still have roughly 200,000 applications sitting that are requesting money. We have the Shuttered Venue Opportunity Grant that's still going. We roughly have 10,000 out for that. Companies or organizations, so they're the artisans and things like that, have that. So we still have all these programs going on actively. The payroll protections for forgiveness, the economic injury disaster loan is actually still active until the end of the year. So if you need help, it is still there at 3.45% interest. For-profit, non-profit 2.75 for up to 30 years to pay back and up to $2 million. So that's there. The restaurant revitalization is closed at this point in time. We hope Congress will go back and put more money to it so we can meet the needs of those other 200,000 that requested it. And then the Shuttered Venue is on the tail end of its opportunity. And as Conway brought up, the Community Navigator, they're working on that project now. That's another grant we have, which will extend our arm out even further. So we have a lot of things going on, but it's basically our support players. So we actually show the true concept of teamwork in this whole context, working public-private relationships.
Well, Carl, thanks for your leadership there. The SBA has done a tremendous job, very trying and challenging circumstances, but a great learning path. Let me speak a little bit about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. You're exactly right, very much underfunded, tremendous need out there, especially for restaurants to be able to recover. I did drop a bill this week along with my colleagues that will make sure we reprogram money so that all 200,000 of those pending applications get funded. I feel pretty confident that as as the appropriation process makes its way through, that it will eventually get funded. I'll go back to a statement that Winston Churchill made as he was dealing with the United States at the precipice of World War II. He said, the United States is the greatest nation the world's ever known, and it always does the right thing after it's exhausted every other possibility. Let me tell you, Congress is very good at exhausting every other possibility, but I believe in exhausting those possibilities, we will get around to making sure we fully fund the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That's incredibly important. And what you all have done through this pandemic to make sure people have what they need is incredibly important. And also, I want to encourage folks to use the SBA as a resource. And as you said, they fund a lot of different partners to get opportunities out into the community. But if you're looking to start a business, you ought to make sure you call the SBA and see what's available there, because they have a lot of things that are available, and they are a good director. They're a good part of the navigator concept to make sure that you get where you need to be. And also, too, if you're a startup business and said, hey, listen, we've got a concept, we need a little bit of capital to kind of develop this concept, that innovation style of grant. So there are a number of elements of things that they do, too, in what are called phase 1 and phase 2 efforts that help folks take that concept and grow it into a workable business model. So tremendous amount of opportunity there. So Carl, thanks for your leadership and all that you've done. Carl has been just absolutely fantastic with our office. Whenever we've had an issue that's come up, Carl has been right there. He's been there to help constituents, and they have, even with the magnitude of what they faced, everything that Carl could do there through his office, he would do. Many times, sometimes the magnitude of what was there was beyond your reach, but if it was humanly possible to do, Carl got it done. So we're really honored to have him and privileged to have him here as our district director. So Carl, thanks again. And again, I want to encourage folks to use SBA as a resource. Next is Joe Stefano. Joe is the director of the Rappahannock Economic Development Corporation. Does a great job here, too, as a conduit to make sure that the concepts of economic development in our community are really brought forward, and that you are the connector with folks and ensuring that they know what's here, but know what they can do to be successful. So Joe, turn the floor over to you.
Yeah. So before I get started, I do want to say to your 2 points about the Paycheck Protection Program, you know, what a lot of small businesses don't understand was that had never been done before.
Right.
And when you think about the pandemic and how fast it hit, Congress and the SBA went from an idea to execution in a matter of weeks, funding and execution. So the program might have had a lot of complications early on, but it was literally being implemented while, you know, on the fly.
Yeah.
Somebody said it was like, you know, mechanics putting an airplane together while the airplane was in the air. You know, so it was very successful. But I get to talk about one of the SBA's key programs, the 504 program, that's been around for 40 years plus or minus. So it's one of 2 mainstays of the program. And I think from a small business perspective, the best way to think about the 504 program is it's the SBA's commercial real estate mortgage arm, specifically for for-profit businesses who are looking to go from leasing to owning their own space, whether you're buying an existing space or doing ground-up construction. And I think to understand the benefits of the program and what it means to small businesses, I think it's important to understand why the SBA stood the program up first. The 504 program was designed because the SBA recognized that collectively small businesses across the nation contribute the most to the economy. You're the ones collectively who are creating the most jobs and contributing to tax bases. But the challenge was that as a small business owner, access or the ability to buy your own space was really complicated because conventional mortgage financing typically required a pretty significant cash injection. And as a small business, as anyone here who or listening who owns a small business, once you start that up, you're always building it, and it's really hard, you know, to save that money and you know, eventually invest in yourselves, and so that's really difficult. I've been around this program in commercial lending, and particularly small business lending, for a little over 20 years, and the common thread with small business owners is they went from earning a paycheck, you know, from another company and having 401k contributions and retirements to starting their dream of owning their own business, and they necessarily give up 401k contributions and paychecks, and sometimes they can never go back to that because they're constantly building. And so the SBA wanted to create this program to allow businesses the ability to do that, to buy your own space, go from paying a landlord to being your own landlord, and really creating some wealth for yourself and your business down the road. They do that within the program by we partner with a bank. We facilitate the 504 program, so that this is not a direct loan from the SBA. You have to use a CDC like ours. We're one of about 200 across the nation, and my little organization covers the entire state of Virginia, DC, and some parts of Maryland. And again, there's a little over 200 of us across the nation like that do that. So you have to utilize our program, our organization. We're a nonprofit 501c4. And so the benefits to you as a business is it allows you to go, again, from leasing to owning, much lower down payment, about half, as little as 10% versus 20 or 25%, conventional financing. And it allows you to get long-term, below market fixed rate financing for 20 or 25 years. Those are two things that just simply are not available in the conventional banking market. So again, for you as a business, and why the SBA would stand up a program like this, it allows you to preserve some of your cash so that you can do both. You can invest in a property, and you can retain some of your cash to continue to grow, market, create jobs. The SBA did not get into this, relevant to this conversation this morning. The SBA didn't get into be a commercial real estate mortgage holder. They got into it for economic development reasons. How can we support small businesses, and what are the economic development goals around that? So there's a job creation goal. So we track, by buying this piece of property, are you growing your business? Will you create jobs? By doing so, naturally you're going to contribute to the tax base of the jurisdiction that you're in. The SBA obviously likes that idea. If you go from leasing to owning, it's really a long-term commitment in that particular area where you do business or headquarter yourself. But there's other economic development goals too. The SBA recognize that there's underserved communities. So if it's a business that's located or locating to a hub zone, that's a key economic development goal. They're paying a particular focus on minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned business, veteran disabled-owned businesses. Manufacturers are a key focus. And then there's a number of others. Businesses that might be going into an area where the county or city has a revitalization program where they want to attract businesses that historically have not been in that particular neighborhood, and they want to grow and support that area. And that's why the SBA really stood up that program, to give you access to capital that you might not have otherwise have the ability to attain. And so the benefits to you, obviously, again, creating wealth, low long-term fixed rate financing, cash preservation, and that's really what we do. So we facilitate that program.
Well, Joseph, thanks so much. Thanks for your leadership. I was here at the end of last year, and we had a chance to have a great conversation about what's happening in the region, but I was amazed, and you're very humble about what you have done to grow this program. The number of loans that you have now helped to originate with these businesses is now at a record level. I mean, which tells me that you're wildly successful in making sure people know what's there, and making sure you make that connection. And that, again, is another part of charting the path to success for those businesses. So really, really unbelievably successful there. So.
Yeah, thank you. And just real quick, that's exactly right. It's when the pandemic started, and I've got a couple people in here that are on my board. I literally I'm just like a small business. I literally went to my balance sheet and my P&L, and I was like, we're probably not going to do another loan for a small business for who knows how long, because they're just struggling to survive right now. And so how much cash do we have? How much payroll can I pay? Literally just like you, the small businesses in the room. And the opposite happened. It was incredible. Small businesses doubled down and started investing in themselves, and the low interest rate market, helped with that. As part of the both stimulus packages, everyone knows about the EIDL and P3 programs, but tucked into those programs were fee waivers and actually payments, monthly payments, full P&I payments made on the business's behalf for a number of months as part of that stimulus package. So thanks to you, and Congress, for that, it's really been a benefit. We've in the last 3 years, our little organization, 3 employees, have been a part of about a little over 100 million total projects, across the state. So it's been good. So, and a lot of that's been 2020 and 2021.
Well, that just shows, I mean, how phenomenal your efforts have been. And like you said, during a time when you think things would kind of turn down, you know, one of the parts of success of that is what you've done to educate people's women programs about how it's to their advantage, because there's still a hesitancy there to say, well, should I do this? For you to be able to do that connection with businesses and for them to have the confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to jump in and do that is incredibly important. So thanks for your leadership there. It would not have happened without your leadership and the great staff you have here. As you said, small staff, but tremendously capable. So thanks for the great job you did that. Sure. Thank you. I'm going to go down to Jennifer Mayton. Jennifer is the agency interim director at the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. So Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Congressman.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to be here with everybody. It's nice to get out and about and be with people in person again. So our agency is a state agency, and we're a sister agency to CIT and the State Secretariat. And our function is really to help support small businesses that are developed, grow, and scale. So we have a number of development programs. We have certification. So many of you have probably heard about the SLAM certification, which is Small Women and Minority-Owned Business Certification. This program is the state's version of certification to allow you to have access to preferences in the state procurement process. Our certifications do have value at the local level and also at the private sector level. A lot of private sector firms have diversity initiatives where these vetted certification programs give you a preference in the process. So we encourage all of you, if you're not certified, to look into that and we can help you. We also do the federal DBE Disadvantaged Business Enterprise certification. That certification is typically around transportation projects. So if you do work with rail or you do work in highway transportation, asphalting, road building, things like that, that is a certification you definitely want to look into to help have access to those contract opportunities. So again, we can help support you in those efforts. We also have business development roles. So we have people stationed all throughout the state, much like the SBDC network, and we partner with them very closely to help give businesses technical assistance on what it is they need to do to grow, how to come up with a market for their business, how to use the resources at the state level. So sometimes it can be complicated to work with government, right? It's hard to figure out who do you need to get registered with, how do you get certified, once you do all these things, how do you leverage it? How do you find contract opportunities so that you can make money off of it? That's the goal. And so we have staff that can meet with you one-on-one to help do business development counseling. We have workshops and events where we hold them across the state to give you information on how to grow your sales. We bring in people that will help you understand finance. We talk all the time, small business owners wear a lot of different hats. You have to come up with a big idea. You have to figure out how to make payroll. You have to figure out how to market it. And guess what? You're probably not going to have a background or a skill set in all of those things. And so it's really important to make sure you use all of the resources that are up here today to help you do that better or help you figure out where you need help. We do have a premier program called our Scaling for Growth program. We have a graduate in the room, and so he can speak to that a little bit too if he'd like. But one of the things we want to do in that program is we take 16 businesses and we bring them in for intensive counseling with a facilitator, and they work with us for 6 months. And at the end of that program, they come out of it with a growth plan. So we help you learn what's your leadership style. We help you learn how to know your numbers. Because as a small business, if you don't know what your margins are, you're not going to be able to be successful. You have to know what it costs you to produce your product, what it takes to market that product, and at the end of the day, whether you're being profitable and whether you're successfully growing your business. And this program really helps businesses do that and achieve kind of that next level of success. So we are recruiting for Cohort 10 now. You can go to our website to learn more information. But at the end of the day, we are really a comprehensive agency where we can help you from soup to nuts to figure out what it is that you want to do in the Commonwealth and help you be successful at that. And part of that success is having access to capital. Like Congressman said, that is one of the most difficult and challenging aspects of being an entrepreneur is figuring out how you're going to have the resources for operating expenses, how you're going to make payroll, how you're going to fund the big idea. So we have programs where we do both direct lending and we do indirect lending. So what that means is we have programs where from a micro business standpoint, we can lend $25,000 or more to a small business. A lot of times it's hard to find financing at that level in the private market, in the banking industry, because it's too little, there's not enough revenue for them to support those activities, and a lot of times they'll tell small businesses, use your credit card. And a lot of our small businesses do bootstrapping, so they're asking friends, they're asking family, they're borrowing money off their credit cards. This is an opportunity to have a fixed rate loan, little to no fees associated with it, so it helps you get off the ground. We have loan programs that are specific to childcare. So sometimes there are industries where it is difficult to find financing because what you're trying to finance is odd. You know, maybe it's collateral that the bank is not used to dealing with. So we work a lot with breweries who have specialized distilling equipment, things that a private entity bank would not be interested in financing. So we can help with all of those needs. We also help if you have a relationship with a bank, but the bank is not willing to give you the loan that you need because sometimes with small business, we're a little bit of a risk, right? We don't have the years of business behind us, or our cash flows are a little bit tight. We can come in and help with that as well. So we do cash collateral and loan guarantee programs where we put money on deposit with the bank to help guarantee it. So they will go ahead and make that deal if they were maybe a little bit unsure. So the Virginia Small Business Financing Authority is part of our organization, and that is the lending arm of our agency, where we can make all those resources available to you. We are also in the process of creating a new unit. Some of you may have read or heard about the state's work in looking at disparities with women and minority-owned businesses in the contracting process. So we were the agency, we oversaw a disparity study that lasted through 2020, and the disparity study did indicate that there is a big disparity between the number of contracts women and minority-owned businesses are getting versus what they're available to perform on. And that is something that we are committed to correcting. And part of that correction is to develop a unit over the next 6 months where we have people that stand by to help source small businesses onto contract opportunities. We're going to be starting to set individual contract goals on Commonwealth contracts to use women and minority-owned businesses. And then we're going to be watching for compliance on those contract opportunities to make sure prime contractors are actually subcontracting out work to those that should have a piece of the pie. So if you are interested in any of the programs that I just talked about, you can go to our website. It's www.sbsd, for Small Business Supplier Diversity, .virginiaspelledout.gov. And check out all the things that we're doing, because we really are here as a resource to help you. There's over 700,000 small businesses in Virginia. And we partner with every single one of these organizations because what you need is going to be different depending on the industry that you're in, what stage of growth you're in. You know, you might be in that innovation stage and you may need CIT. You may be a more established business and ready to grow and scale, and so you need our Scaling for Growth program. So we are more than happy when we meet with you. If we see a need that we can't meet, we will refer you to one of these people up here to make sure you have this whole ecosystem of support. So to everybody's point, we are a team, and at the end of the day, our job is to help grow you guys. And so come look at our programs, and we are happy to assist and glad to have been a part of this conversation today.
Well, Jennifer, thank you. I want to emphasize several things that you talked about that are incredibly important. You know, one of the big things that I hear from folks back and forth is access to capital. Many times that's a very, very difficult path, and many times these businesses are non-conventional. So as you said, when they go to a bank, the bank goes, we don't have finance there. We don't know how to assess value to that. We don't know what to look at as far as collateral for that. So your help there is incredibly important. Another element too I hear from folks all the time is, I've got a business where I think I can do business with a governmental entity, whether it's the state or a local government or even the federal government. But they throw up their hands and say, it's impossible for me to navigate. How do I get in? I look at this and it's kind of a puzzle and I don't know how to put the pieces together. So your help to make sure that businesses can say, how do I decode getting into, you know, competing for these contracts, and how to make sure, as you said, that you help create a level playing where everybody has an equal access to be able to get in, to be able to compete for that businesses, because many times it's not that. And it's frustrating for businesses because they want to get there, but they just don't know how to get there. So your efforts along those two lines are incredibly important. I appreciate what you all do. They do a great job, folks. Please, those of us that are here or online, please take advantage of all the things that Jennifer's agency has to offer. It's incredibly important. I'm going to go next to Jackie Davis. Jackie is the Executive Director of VA Consortium Workforce Development Board. You know, we talk about all the different aspects of businesses and what businesses do and the resources they have to kind of get underway. One of the elements that's incredibly important, and all you have to do is to look today at most signs on businesses. What's the most often seen sign on a business today? Help wanted, hiring, signing bonuses, wages, all those kinds of things. So the biggest thing today, the biggest key for businesses to be successful is workforce. And I think the biggest challenge going forward on workforce is how do workers that are transitioning back into the workforce today, how do they get the skills necessary for the jobs, not only of today, but the jobs of tomorrow? Because much of this, what we see happening, is workforce transition. It's how do we make sure we get them the skills? And what Jackie does there with the VA Consortium on workforce development is exactly that. How do we make sure that we have the educational systems, the courses, the pathways for folks to be able to retrain or to get additional training to make sure they're on a career path? The way we ensure success for businesses and their employees is what I call a path to success. And the path to success is saying we want you to come in and start at the basic level, and we want to make sure that we enhance your skills so that you can move up in this company or move up in that career path, to add skills, to be able to go from an apprentice to a journeyman to a master, and whatever skill set it may be. CTE is a big one today, career and technical education, but also many of the other skill sets. So Jackie's doing a wonderful job there. So Jackie, I want you to tell us all the things that VA Consortium is doing.
Thank you. Our area consists of this financial year 16. We also cover the Northern Neck Middle Peninsula and Eastern Shore. We oversee the Virginia Career Work Centers that help both the job seekers and the employers. As you say, they have hiring signs are everywhere. So our job is to connect those job seekers to those employers. And if there's a skill that the job seeker doesn't have, we can help them gain those skills, connect them with training. We have a training provider list that has multiple training providers on it. There's funding there to help with that training. Also, you talk about the employers having employees and wanting to upskill those. We have incumbent worker training programs where we can help fund the business to support that training for those individuals to upskill to meet the needs of the employer. And then also we can help the employer backfill with the lower skilled individuals that they need. Right now, one of the things that we have that we're helping businesses with is the return to earn, the governor's initiative with the sign-on bonuses that help fill those positions. So that's one of the things we have. We also have, if you're hiring an individual, there's a huge cost to training an individual when they first come on. So we have the on-the-job training program that we can help the employer as well subsidize some of the cost of bringing on a new employee. So if anyone's interested, I'm willing to talk. And our Virginia Career Work Centers is always welcoming businesses or any guests at all. Our Career Work Centers also are there for employers. It's not just for the job seekers coming in. We have a resource room with computers that if an employer needs a computer or internet, we have rooms there for interviewing and all of those things. We make accommodations for anything that you would need.
Well, Jackie, thanks. That's incredibly important today, especially to facilitate for businesses in either transitioning employees or, as you said, getting employees on board. You know, there's a real demand out there for employees. I think there's a significant supply of employees. The key is how do we make that match? How do we make sure that we have the employees that are getting to the right job sets, getting on the right career paths? You all do a great job of that. Really a great facilitator there. So I would encourage folks, either as businesses or people looking for employment, to make sure you look at VA Consortium in order to do a great job there. So. Next we have Wayne Waldrop. He's the president of Virginia Community Capital. We talked a lot about capital, Wayne. So
I'm feeling the pressure. Does everybody have a handout? Okay, everybody got one. Some of the speakers up here may not, but I thought I'd put some thoughts together here so that you could leave the meeting this is a very important market for us. Virginia Community Capital covers the state of Virginia. We are a community development financial institution. It's also known as a CDFI. And as a CDFI, 60% of everything that we do needs to be in a distressed or underserved market. So by definition, our company is dedicated to a lot of the minority and distressed communities. What's cool about Virginia Community Capital is it's one of the largest CDFIs in Virginia. We're a nonprofit, so we don't have a lot of the pressures of a traditional bank. We're run by a board of directors that's geographically dispersed. But we've been in business for 15 years, and after 2 years, we started a for-profit bank. Very unusual organizational structure, and I point that out because it's significant to how we operate in the market. Our bank is a state-chartered, FDIC-insured bank. So imagine we have a CDFI that is a loan fund that owns a for-profit bank. So what happens is, at the loan fund level, we apply for grants for our company, and we get $4 or $5 million in grants every year. And then we take that, which those grants are designed to do a variety of things, and I'm going to talk about that. One of the grants that we just got was to help close the disparity in credit to minority businesses. We have grants for solar, we've got grants for healthy food, we've got grants for low-income housing projects. Now, these grants come to us, and then we combine that grant money with the capital of the bank to be an innovative provider of capital, which you see at the bottom of this is our mission. We want to be innovative. Callaway talks about innovation. We try to innovate in our own organization as well. We've been around for 15 years. We've got $340 million in assets. We got a $7.5 million legal limit. We'll close about $120 million in loans this year. And thank you, Carl. We closed about close to $50 million in PPP loans for both rounds, and we're very active in that process. We also are connected to the SBDC network because we actually sponsor the SBDC in Richmond. So we understand the ecosystem that's necessary to start and develop a business. You can see there at the bottom of the page the types of loans that we do. We do a lot of SBA loans. We are a preferred lender. We do a lot of 7A loans. We're very active in the 504 market. In fact, we just did a webinar this week with one of the CECs about 504. That is an exceptional product because it does provide low equity into the deal, typically 10% if you're going to buy a building, and then we keep 50%, they take 40%, and their piece is low fixed rate loans. Really good product. I would definitely encourage you to call Redco here or call me. We work together all the time. So let me tell you one of the challenges of credit access, because this is something that you're going to face if you go to a traditional bank. At the top of the second page, sorry, you can't really see this, it says standard underwriting requirement. So here is what most banks are going to look for. They're going to look for businesses that have been in business for 2 years, okay? Now, when we look at a business like that, some of those businesses or business owners may not have been in business for 2 years, but they have similar experience or experience in the industry. So we will account for that because what we want, obviously, is somebody that understands the market and knows how to run the business. So that's important to us. The principle of the business is a key part of our underwriting. Typically, what you're going to do at a bank is they're going to look for 1.2 times coverage. So what that means is the money coming in covers your loan payments by 1.2 times. That's pretty standard across the industry. As a secondary repayment source, we will get an appraisal or a liquidation value on equipment. Typically, for owner occupied, we'll lend 85% of the appraised value or 80% of the orderly liquidation value. Now, minimum credit score, 650. For a lot of small businesses, that's a problem because you have gone in and financed with credit cards or other things. It's hard to keep that up. We will consider loans of less than 650 if we have a mitigant, okay? And sometimes the mitigant is a strong guarantor, or if you go down to that second box here, an SBA loan, 7A loan. Typically the cash flow of an SBA loan is pretty good, but usually we use the 7A if collateral is short. You talk about specialized equipment, that sort of thing. If the bank sells it, if you're coming to buy equipment at a bank liquidation sale, you're gonna want a good price for it, right? So you're gonna show up at the liquidation sale saying, I'm gonna get a good price. Well, guess what? The bank knows that too. So we understand that if we have to liquidate, sell that equipment, we're not gonna get paid out. And so we have to go to Carl and his group and say, okay, Carl, help us out here to make the loan. 504, we've already talked about that. One of the grants that we have is to address food deserts and value-added processing for food. So if you are somebody that it fits into that category, when we get money like that, we have enhanced loan loss reserve as well as the rate buy-down money from the CDFI fund. So call us on that. We have a very active solar practice. We do a lot of power purchase agreements. We'll do installations on your business. If you want to put in a solar array, one of the few banks that will lend against solar equipment, because guess what? Once you get that equipment up there, the value of that, if we have to take it off, is pretty low. But what we look at is the savings that the solar system will do and the impact on cash flow. On the second page, if any of you are in affordable housing development or historic preservation, let us know. We're very active in that space. And I want to tell you about the Economic Equity Fund, because this is something that we've started really with $1 million grant from a bank that gave us a grant. And the grant is $1 million in capital proceeds, $200,000 in enhanced loan loss reserve, and the objective is to lend that money to the minority community. And because the way the grant was structured, we have some money now to say, okay, well, I can take this loan loss reserve that they have given me and say, okay, I'm going to allocate a little bit of that loan loss reserve to this loan because it's a little riskier. And we know that. I mean, and so we have those resources. Right now, it's limited to the greater Richmond area. We're in the process of trying to raise $10 million of that money to cover the whole state. We're optimistic about that, and once that gets done, we'll certainly be letting you know. I do, Congressman, also want to thank you. CDFIs have been funded pretty well, and we're expected to get some more funding in the fourth quarter, which would be significant for us. We are in the process of applying for some of that money right now, and we expect it to double our capital base. So what that means is it's going to double our impact. So when we get that, it's just going to be good for everybody. So give us a call. You've got my contact information here. Reach out to me, and we'll get together by Zoom or come up for a visit and see if we can help you.
Wayne, thanks again. Thanks for all that you do too. It's incredibly important, folks, to make sure you take advantage of Virginia Community Capital. They are the opportunity that you need, especially for lending that doesn't fit the box for conventional lenders. And there are many instances like that, and that's the biggest impediment or frustration for folks to say, I want to grow my business or I want to start my business, but I just can't get that access to capital. Let me tell you, Virginia Community Capital is set up exactly for that.
That's right. So
we want to make sure that you get there. Wayne's doing everything he can to grow that opportunity. I appreciate what you're doing to grow it across Virginia. I think those things are incredibly important. So what you're hearing here is a lot of different opportunities, from what Jennifer has talked to you about, to what Wayne's talked about, to what Joseph's talked about. I mean, there are all kinds of different conduits there for you to get access to capital, whether it's the real estate side, whether it's Jennifer helping you navigate, whether it's Wayne saying, hey, you're non-conventional, but we can find a place to get you to fit. Those things are incredibly important, so please take advantage of that. I want to go down to Michelle Caldwell-Thompson. Michelle is with the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think the Fredericksburg Chamber is one of the best, if not the best chamber in the state. You talk about tremendous organization. Talk about networking, talking about making sure that you have that opportunity to know other businesses, to grow. Michelle's one of the superstars there, does a fantastic job. So Michelle, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. So.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Michelle Caldwell-Thompson, and I am a small business owner. I am an entrepreneur who has had the opportunity to have a small business in the Fredericksburg area since 2004. And I serve as a director on the board for the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. With that said, the chamber is a voice for business. With nearly 1,000 members, the chamber represents access. Being a part of the chamber as a minority-owned business, it opens doors to individuals and resources that otherwise one may not have had the opportunity to connect to. Whether that is leaning in a networking capacity through CNU, the Chamber Network of Enterprising Women, or a business development opportunity through the Chamber's lead share opportunities, the Chamber is a voice and represents access. The Chamber also represents the opportunity for executive growth and development. You may have heard of our signature program, Leadership Fredericksburg. That positions minority-owned businesses and businesses at large to have an opportunity to network with other leaders in the community, to have a mentor, and to continue to develop leadership skills that will help their business advance and grow. The chamber is a voice for business. With being a small business, we can accelerate our opportunity for business affairs by engaging with the chamber, especially the government affairs scenario. Coming through the pandemic, needing resources about being a small business and what the appropriate steps are to operate safely and to re-engage and what the guidelines are, the chamber provided an exceptional platform to share that information with not only small and mid-sized businesses, but with entities throughout the state. And we have recently, at the chamber, been recognized through their platform of our We Are Business podcast, received an international award for promoting information that helps small businesses not only be competitive, but exceptionally well positioned. The Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce is an opportunity to plug into resources. The Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce is an opportunity to have networking experiences. The Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce is an opportunity, a platform for businesses to find other like-kind businesses that may be just ahead of their growth process to lean in and get additional mentorship opportunities. The Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce is a voice for business in our community. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much. Thanks again. Thanks for your leadership. You've done a tremendous amount of work there, not only as a successful businesswoman, but also what you've done to help mentor through the chamber. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, let's do this. You've heard some great presentations on the plethora of opportunities that are here with our panelists. Let's go ahead and go to questions. And what I'd like to do is we're doing Facebook Live, so we'll have some questions on Facebook Live, but we also have some folks here in the audience. So let's go ahead and start with the audience, and then we'll go back and forth. We'll go one from the audience and then one from Facebook as we get through the questions. So we open it up here to folks here in the room. If you have questions or thoughts or ideas.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks to the panelists. My name is Sean Lahi. My background is I'm working for the federal employee, United States Patent and Trademark Office. So right now, my education is finished my MBA from Syracuse University, and I enrolled in the Harvard Business School for Business Analytics program. And I can bring a lot of concept and improvements in designing, development, engineering field, as well as hardware, software, sensor designing, first responder, wearable sensors, as well as some business development with digital transformations for the new businesses. Also, it's capabilities for fraud and fraud detection systems for finances and loans and everything, and how to mitigate that. With that said, what I'm looking for is a grant, not fundamentally a loan, and how has the idea and innovations that I have it. So how can I get the grant for the new technology that I'm thinking of for our community, for Virginia? And not only the Virginia, it could be commercialized in the United States, as well as also the other states. Maybe even the foreign countries may be able to use that technology they can buy from us.
So you're talking about a grant just to get started?
Right.
So would it be like a small business innovation grant, so you're still doing kind of the R&D to determine is this a concept that it is something you develop into a product or a service?
Exactly.
Yes, sir. That's a great question.
Yes.
Thank you. And that's exactly what CIT is here to help with. So we have a couple of programs that can help you with that. On the front end, we actually have one of the largest SBIR and STTR training programs in the country. I think we're always either third or fourth in terms of the number of people we work with, the number of funds that we help draw down. And we actually, as part of the training that we offer, we actually have a small grants program as well, so that innovators and entrepreneurs like yourself can actually go out and work with technical consultants. But not, the grant can pay for that technical consultant piece to help you with that initial early phase work. And then that's potentially leads to what I talked about earlier with our commercialization. They actually provide the bigger grants. Actually, they just issued 34 this past week, up to basically $100,000 grants to help with that commercialization, the pilot testing, product and service testing. And so please feel free to check us out, and I can actually connect with you after this and get you the right people at our organization that can actually directly help you. In addition to other training and workshops that we have that are available on our website.
Thank you. One thing I just want to add also, the company, the startup company that I have in mind is Kenny is helping me out to be successful on that. One of the STEM program, STEM, is for high school students.
Yes.
And we want to target the high school student, especially in Virginia, to be an expert on science, math, and technology.
Yes.
And if they grow with that, with fundamentally, when the foundation is strong, they have a tremendous idea, they have a tremendous skill set. They can be very successful in this, in entrepreneurship, in the intellectual property, as well as in science and technology. So that the startup company that I'm thinking about, also promoting that skill set also in the high school level, and also business development.
I think that's a great point, and you heard a lot of opportunities here expressed earlier, and that is, what do we do to take those innovative and creative youth, to take the concepts that they have, those ideas, and then get them to think in the realm, not just of the technology, but how would I take this idea and put it into something that's now marketable, either as a service or as a product. Get them to think about that early on, because they're going to be, as you said, the future business innovators, the future business owners, and many times they have an idea that's pretty astounding, and if we can help cultivate that when they're young, by the time they're finished high school, they could be the next Steve Jobs. Look at that, Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, both of them, entrepreneurs, didn't go through the conventional process. Bill Gates the same way, didn't go through the 4 years of college. Very, very creative and innovative folks, but just didn't fall into that 4-year engineering program, but you talk about STEM, there's so many people out there that are extraordinary and talented in those areas. And if you look at where the world is going, it is absolutely in the realm of STEM. So we want to make sure we do that, as well as emphasizing STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and math, in the realm of career and technical education. Because we need the engineers that do the conceptual work, but we also need the skilled craftsmen that put together those advanced systems, that build those printed circuit boards, that create the computers for the next generation of automobiles, and all those elements. And it's incredibly important. We have several companies in the district like Micron. Micron is the single semiconductor producer in the United States. They have now doubled the capacity of their foundry. And they double the capacity because, does anybody here know what the fastest growing demand for microchips is in the world? It's automobiles, exactly, Conway. It's automobiles. And they're doing that. In fact, right now, as you go by an automobile, new car lot, you don't see many new cars there. And why? Because they're waiting for the factories to produce them. The delay is the supply of microchips. So what the car producers are doing now is they're saying, we're not going to wait anymore. So many of the new cars that are coming out are now not having the advanced computer operations on board because they got to get cars out to be able to get sold. But that's one of those areas where we want to make sure that we grow that, and we need more individuals that are developing the concepts for these semiconductors. Because remember, semiconductors get smaller and more powerful every year by orders of magnitude. So doing things like that, it's not just the Microns and having young folks that come out of high school and go directly to work for Micron, but also for those that form the next Micron. That'll say, what's the next generation of microchip? How do we do things? And there's all kinds of exciting technology there. They use rare earth elements to create semiconductors, but there's also some new and exciting technology in using plasma, which is a kind of a nebulous thing in my mind that happens, but it's amazing what that can do. The key is how do you control it? But there are a lot of young folks that have some pretty imaginative ideas with that. So how do we encourage that? And you're exactly right. To have a place not only where students can connect, but also to have businesses that are kind of the cultivating grounds, I call it, for getting those students to think about those ideas, and then they can see a way to put those in place, are incredibly important. So I appreciate you bringing it up. And Conway, thanks for all that you do. You're the conduit too there for those young folks that say, hey, I've got this thought right here, how do I grow it?
Just so the CIT is, I think, is probably one of the better options for you to look into, but because grants really aren't traditionally available through traditional bank institutions. The SBA, there's really no grant money there. CIT is a great resource, but the other resource that you or any other small businesses that might be looking for grants, it would be worth looking into the economic development authorities in your jurisdiction where you're headquartered. Over the last several years, many have set up micro loan grant gap funding programs. Stafford County, for example, their EDA has a program that includes grant money, and typically they're very focused on a specific industry. Stafford County is focused really on your industry, technology. So that might be worth looking into. And if it's not a grant, a lot of times they'll do either a forgivable loan or a very low interest, like 1 to 3% interest rate loan over long term. So whether it's you or any other small businesses looking for that, EDA is really under known.
So if I need Stafford County,
Yeah.
I know the company involved last 17 years.
There you go.
And then the ICAP program would be an innovation, commercialization, and assistance program through the SBDC. And I'll send you.
Yeah, we'll throw it and get together. Thank you very much.
And they work, a lot of their customers get CIT grants.
And we actually, CIT is actually, we support the ICAP program to help with that pipeline, with the content and the start methodology, the things that we're doing. I think what you'll see here, as the congressman has highlighted, is that, in Virginia, we have a burgeoning network and this ecosystem approach, and all of our organizations, our agencies have put applied to this notion of, you're going to get help where it's from somebody. We're going to make sure we get you to the right. If we don't do it, Jennifer said with our agency, if they can't do it, they refer us. We refer all these folks, and that's that, building that network to support businesses, and I think particularly to support minority businesses who may not know what resources are out there. We can help introduce you to a variety of resources to the work that we do, and folks like the congressman support what we do as well.
Conway, that's a great point. You have a set of panelists here that will help you get to where you need to be. So this is a team here. every one of them do something that's unique, but there's a lot of crossover there too. So we'll make sure to get you on that path to success.
Thank you.
We're going to go to a Facebook question, and then we'll come back. Yeah.
We actually don't have one at this
Okay.
moment. So.
Hi, I'm Barbara Gustafson, and I represent small businesses. I'm a small women business owner in the area with Discover Next Step, and I work with organizations and businesses. And I just want to thank you all for what you're doing to support businesses with the economy. And we hear a lot about the financial wellness aspects, but we think about those who, we have more hope because they've made it. Unfortunately, it breaks many of our hearts to see those who are still struggling, who haven't done well. And so I'm looking at, how we've sometimes overlooked the human aspects of running a business. And it's been mentioned that small businesses, we wear all the hats, and we are the backbone of the economy. So I really would like to hear thoughts on how we can support or what's in place for businesses as we move forward and looking at over the last 16 months and where we've come from. What can we put in place just to have a more well-rounded outcome?
Well, if I may, so I think the Scaling for Growth program that I talked about is just one opportunity, because one of the things that I'm always struck by as we graduate people from that program is the fact that having that CEO network of other founders and other business owners is really so vital and important just to the mental well-being, to know you're not in it alone. Other people are going through the same things you are, and when you run into a challenge, you can pick up the phone and call that new network that you've developed by being a part of that program. So I think to your point, there is a lot of stress that small business owners face. I always say going into business for yourself is not for the faint of heart, and it really does take a village to help support you. And so that's one of the programs that we have that I think helps create that cohesive network for you to feel that you, again, are not alone and you have support. And we actually just graduated Cohort 9 last night. And one of our speakers actually broke down in tears as he talked about his journey and his path through entrepreneurship and the fact that he had lifted his car. He had had days where he didn't know if his wife and his daughter would be able to weather the storm with him as he tried to figure out what his next steps were going to be. He is now a successful entrepreneur, but it took him a while to get there. And so I completely hear what you're saying, and I think those resources to make sure that there's support in that arena too is very important. And that's one of the things our program does, is to try to give that cohesive network. So that's one thing I will say from our agency.
I'd also like to add that the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce Leadership Fredericksburg program is an awesome platform for established and emerging leaders to get that support beyond the boardroom. To have a place where, a safe place where one can be authentic, to say it's not just me with these types of struggles, and not only to air the types of struggles that that you will encounter being a business owner or a business executive, but also to have a circle, a network of other executives who've gone over that path as well and come out successful on the other side. And it's not just a one-stop shop when you go through the Leadership Fredericksburg program. There is a Leadership Alumni where you can continue to lean into these resources to get help not only through access, but just to know other folks that are business leaders going through the same types of things as they endeavor to reach their goals of becoming sustainable businesses.
I second that. I'm a graduate of the Chamber's leadership program, I think 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And it's one of those things that, like, we all have somebody or something that hits our thoughts every day. And there's probably not a day goes by that I'm not in my car and I'm thinking of something that I experienced at Leadership Fredericksburg. But the great thing about that program is, and to your question, Barbara, it's such a great network that's built there. And I remember stepping into that program, and there were organizations that were the executives that I've been in the community and public facing for years, attending that program for the first time for themselves. And then there were companies that were investing in the next generation of leadership in their in their organization. And it was so great to sit down and look at these people that I've looked up to going through the program and realizing, you know, they don't know what they're doing any more than I do or anybody else. We're all trying to figure it out. And we're all trying to figure it out, you know, and then you have, you know, somebody who's young in their career who has these great ideas, right? You know, and it's a really, really great beneficial program. But the networking and the you know, the relationships that you build, you know, really last a long time beyond that. So it's a great investment that the chamber makes in the community.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great point, Joseph. Great point, Michelle. Leadership Fredericksburg is phenomenal. I know I've had the opportunity to come by several times and speak to students there, and they are just really thoughtful, imaginative individuals that just want to learn and want to be successful. So that's the key. So surrounding yourself with folks that have that same desire is another pathway to success. Appreciate that. Anything else for Barbara? Barbara, thank you. Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, I did have a question. I'm Jonathan Ross. I'm a small software development company here, do government contracting stuff. I had a question for Jennifer and actually for you, Carl. Something you said made me think about this. You mentioned that you guys did a study, and you said that, like, say for like women-owned businesses and stuff, there was deficiencies and stuff, and then you were going to take a look at how to increase those numbers or anything. I'm assuming you're talking at a state level or anything, something, but even extending that to the federal level, like for contracts, there's no oversight for like if the Army needs to have a certain percentage of women-owned businesses and stuff like that. I mean, but there's nothing that can be done, even from the SBA level or anything. You can't say, hey, Army, you guys are low on your women-owned numbers, do so and so and so and so. There's no oversight or anything that can be done from that point. So like, what are the types of things that you guys are considering as far as even at the state level to help to encourage, I'll use the word encourage, contracts to use the minority businesses or the women-owned businesses and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So one of the things in the Commonwealth is that procurement law requires that any type of measure that we do be race and gender neutral, meaning you can't discriminate against people for, you know, race, origin, sex, gender, any of those things. So you have to have data to support race and gender conscious measures, meaning you have to have gone out, you have to have done the research to identify that there's a true significant disparity in the businesses that are available, meaning the business is competent to do the work, has done work of that size before, is willing and able to perform on those contracts. And so that's what the Commonwealth undertook in 2020. And we hired a company and they did that research. And what we found is that women and minority-owned businesses should have been getting about 32% of state contract dollars, which is a $7 billion pot. So it's pretty significant. But what we found is in reality what was happening is they were only getting about 13.4%. So that's a pretty substantial and significant disparity, which allows us to then start to look at policy and implement race and gender conscious programs where we can set goals that are specific for women and minority-owned businesses on different contract opportunities. So what the plan is that we will begin to start to set contracts on individual opportunities, set goals for those contracts to say, okay, based on what you're buying and based on the availability of women and minority-owned businesses in that industry, in that area, we would expect that you would subcontract out 23% of this opportunity. And then, to your point, there has to be compliance, right? If there's no compliance, then a lot of times what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. And so that's where our unit is being created to come back and do compliance. So if I were to contract with her and she says, I'm gonna contract out 23%, then our division is gonna actually monitor her contract and make sure that she is actually subcontracting out 23% of that work. If she were to fail to do that and continue to fail to do that and not be able to justify why that's happening, she can face debarment in the Commonwealth. So there's now starting to become real consequences for not adhering to these goals. A lot of times they are aspirational, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that there's some teeth to this because we want to make sure our SWAM vendors are successful and have access to the contract opportunities they should have.
So how do you go about, you said about connecting businesses, so you say that there's so many competent women-owned businesses and she's looking for women-owned business goals, so how would you go about finding those women-owned businesses? Do you go through the SBA as far as for your research? Is that how you would say, hey, there's 5 women-owned businesses in Fredericksburg that do exactly what she's looking for, and then do you connect those businesses with her, or what's that process about?
So we do a number of things. So at
Okay.
the state level, we have our own certified directory of businesses that we oversee and manage.
Okay.
So we put out that directory, it's on our website. So if you go to that website that I said before, there is a directory of certified SWAM and DBE businesses available. So when prime contractors are looking for subs, they can go to that directory to find subs. We have it filterable and sortable by region, by industry. If you know an NIGP code, you can throw that in there and it'll tell you how many women and minority-owned businesses there are in that area that do that work.
Okay.
But we also do matchmaking events. So, intentional matchmaking is important. If we know that we have primes, they're gonna do large contract opportunities, especially construction, because they're phased out and work's coming and you can really try to develop the pipeline of SWAM businesses to perform in those contracts. We will do intentional matchmaking opportunities or events. So the Port of Virginia is actually holding a huge event that we worked with them on, where we were working to let small businesses know what contract opportunities they had coming up,
Right.
so that they could bid on those contract opportunities and be prepared for them. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Obviously, we encourage our prime contractors to hold fairs, so when they know they have work they need to do, because the biggest problem, what we find, is that the SWAM businesses just don't know the opportunity is coming, or don't know that it's out there.
Right.
So it's really important that we create those environments where information can be shared. And we do push out opportunities to our certified businesses. So if we know there's a contract coming, we will push that out to say, hey, get ready. This solicitation is getting ready to hit the street. So you want to be prepared so that you can bid if you're interested.
So it's a matter of just registering on your site?
Absolutely.
Okay. And continuing that question, is there anything that exists along those lines for the federal level? Does the SBA have enough push behind it to regulate?
Well, having done federal contracting in the past, my previous life, and as one of my businesses, the one thing that a lot of people forget when they're trying to connect with agencies, they try to hit the big agencies instead of going to the smaller agencies that typically are looking for opportunity, but nobody's coming to the doorstep. So I use examples. Waldrop Island. NASA's out there, Navy's out there. They can't get anybody. Why? Because it's too far out. Nobody wants to go there. But yet, they're screaming for people. So people aren't doing their homework. The other thing is, when you come and talk to me, you tell me what you do. I really don't care what you do. I want you to tell me what I do and what you're going to fix. That tells me you've done your homework. I have so many people, when I ask them what my mission is, they can't tell me. I don't have time for that. I have thousands of contracts I gotta approve. And that's what I keep trying to tell organizations and businesses. You gotta come in prepared. It doesn't matter that they're giving you your 8A program, you're a veteran, you're a woman. At the end of the day is, can you do the job, finish it on time, do it for the dollar amount that's being asked. That's the challenge that the minority organization businesses that I always work with. I say, this is the way you have to start preparing yourself. This is the way you have to start thinking. And then I ask them, what are you doing? What are you chasing? What agency? What do I always hear? I hear Department of Defense, Department of Defense, Department of Defense. I go, please don't go after Department of Defense. Go after U.S. Patent. Go after Treasury. Go after SBA. Go after GSA. All that. That's that side of it. There are opportunities, and almost all of them are meeting their minority numbers. They're not meeting their women numbers, but they're meeting their minority numbers. Now, the other side of it is the problem that's being created, that's creating barriers now, is all these organizations like GSA and that are creating special schedules. And that's creating a barrier because the businesses there are only so many are allowed on the schedule. So if you miss it, you're basically out for 5.
Right.
And then depending on how many go. So that's a thing that Congress really has to address, because the agencies are just creating this to narrow their pipeline, because there's so many in the pipeline.
Mhm.
So they're creating these avenues to narrow it, and what it does, it takes businesses out.
Right.
And so we've seen this with the newest one that just came out. It just literally, there was only eight A firms that were allowed it. Okay, you can't function that way.
Yeah.
And, there's things that SBA can challenge,
Mhm.
but we don't have authority.
Right.
Okay, so all we can do is do checks and balances and show the numbers every year. Are they compliant or not? That's submitted to Congress. But at the end of the day, it's Congress comes down and decides whether there's going to be teeth to it or not.
Okay.
But then you have the other side that people are trying to sit here and say, it's taxpayers' money, we got to try to get the best price. And that's why I always try to stress to the business, it's about not trying to make a bootload of money because you have this perk. It's about doing it for what you can do it for,
Right.
and things like that. So trying to stress to it, there's other reasons that are impediments that, as I call programs that were put in that protect certain groups,
Mhm.
and that creates problems for the minorities and women to get contracts. Those are other things, but once again, those are out of our control because that's a congressional level that has to change. So that's where I always tell people, but the biggest thing is always start out subcontracting.
Mhm.
And if you're really not sure how to play the game, then we have the All Small Mentor Protege program, which has been very successful because it's open to all businesses.
Mhm.
And it has connected a lot of contract opportunities that were being missed before, that even small businesses would get together and pursue a contract that gain success. And we've seen a lot of businesses, that's how they're landing their first contracts now, by using that program, and it's not difficult to get in.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And the Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a great resource to help you figure out what agencies to pursue. They look at what's coming down the pike for the next 6 to 24 months and where there's opportunities, and they do matching programs as well. They're free. They'll have a presence here again in August, we hope. And then what she was talking about, with their service, I had a client who was doing $30,000 a year, something like that. With Courtney took her to a couple of these matching events, and she comes back a few months later and she's done like $200,000. And I was like,
Awesome.
it's just tremendous from getting introduced to people.
That's what I like to hear. Okay, got it. I appreciate your time, everybody.
Jonathan, thank you. Carl, Susan, thank you. Jennifer, thank you. Let me comment, Jonathan, on the gap that I think still exists. The statutory language at the federal level is for specific set-asides, whether it's 8A, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. So those are there. They're in the code. So you would make an assumption and say, well, this is required. It is required under law. The problem, as Carl pointed out, the law is there's no consequence if the agencies don't meet it. So even if it's in the code, technically it is something you think would be a compliance issue, but it's really aspirational. So the question then becomes, should there be an effort to put in some sort of requirement on the agency to say, if you don't meet this, this is what happens? And there's been a struggle, because I've talked to this with a number of members of Congress. The struggle is what would be the proper motivator for the agency? Some folks would say, well, if you don't meet your number, then you reduce funding. Well, reduce funding in what areas? And if you're reducing funding, and what you're trying to get out the door with contracts, isn't that counter to what you're trying to achieve with putting that out the door? And then the other element is you can't, under the statute, you can't civilly go after agencies because they're not civilly liable. And then the question is this is not anything that I think has a criminal element to it, so you don't want to go after individuals in an agency from a criminal statute.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge always is, okay, yeah, we got the requirement there, but what would be the necessary motivators to get the agencies to say, yes, let's do it? And a lot of agencies, they do the audits and they say, hey, listen, we're supposed to do 5% and we're doing 4%. So they'll identify that. Or they're saying, we're supposed to do 5%, well, we've done 6%. So, good to them. So it's always a challenging question, and we've asked that in multiple ways. How do you do that? And I think civil and criminal elements are off the table because I don't think the intent is there with the agencies. I don't think anybody in the agency says, hey, we're intentionally not going to meet this. I think a lot of times there's situational circumstances. Carl is spot on too, and that is as these contracts are looked at, really the element that becomes most at issue. We've done a lot of acquisition reform on the defense side to make sure we're opening things up there. One of the big elements on the acquisition side is the competition realm, and that is many times folks are competing, and ultimately it boils down to price.
Right.
And folks say, well, wait a minute, why did you just decide on price? Because what I provide as a service or a good is actually of greater value, even though it may be a little bit more. When you look at what you get, you can actually get a better value there. So we have tried on the Armed Services Committee through the years, and we've made significant changes to acquisition to make sure that decisions are made based on best value,
Right.
not low price, technically acceptable.
Right.
And LPTA is one of those, bringing it down to the lowest common denominator. And many times, as Carl pointed out, sometimes LPTA goes to a company that has marginal performance in what they can do. And we've seen some of those situations, and then the service branch agencies are saddled with, well, how do we make this work? You've got a contract for 2 years, and you say, it's going to cost us more to cancel the contract than it is to try to get this company up to performance. And sometimes you're in a no-win situation. I can give you multiple examples of how that's happened. So we still have to do a better job on reforming acquisition. And Carl brings up all the right points about what to do. The best thing in that realm is to make sure that as you put a proposal out there, I want to emphasize this to everybody, if you're going after business, whether it's local government, state government, or federal government, the best way to be successful is to say, I'm going to show you best value. So your metric there not only needs to be price, but it's why is your service or product better, even though you may charge a little bit more for it. And you can put it right in there and say, listen, yeah, it may cost a little bit more, but let me tell you why what we do or what we provide to you is going to save the taxpayer money. I think those things are critically important, and it's becoming more and more of a center of decision making for the acquisition community and how they look at things. It's taken a little while to get away from that, because what happens, Jonathan, as you know, is if you compete for a contract or for a service and you don't get it, what happens? Protest, exactly. Protest. So if you win and there's a protest, you're marking time. You're waiting for a final determination to be made, and guess what? You got to have employees on board to make sure that when that contract hopefully comes your way, you got folks there, so you're paying them, and you're marking time. So there's a tremendous amount of waste in that process, in what happens there. So we have to figure out a way too to look at being fair, because there are times when bad decisions have been made. But we got to make sure too that we provide a wide enough metric to where when the decision is made on a protest, it doesn't come down to the lowest common denominator, because many times the only objective measure in a proposal becomes the price. So folks say, well, all these other things sound good, but we really can't measure them, so we're just going to go to price. And you look at it and go, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, and it's clear many times. So we have to do a better job there. We have tried on the acquisition side, and it's just on DoD side, and Carl is exactly right. Don't look just at DoD. And there is a difference in how agencies implement the set-asides. Some agencies do a really, really good job at it. Some agencies do a bad job at it. So I would make sure too that you look at where are those opportunities, and there's some pretty good histories out there about how awards are given, how these companies how companies compete, who's successful, who's not, and how the agencies make the decision. So getting the metric on how agencies make the decision too is key, and we can certainly help you with that so you can kind of get an insight there. But Susan talked about that, Carl talked about that, Jennifer talked about that. All of those are opportunities for us, so we'll make sure that they would work with you.
And I appreciate everybody's answers too, and I really do.
Now, Congressman, to expand a little bit, and when you talk about certain groups not being recognized, the number one reason is because of protest.
Okay.
Because I can tell you the number one group right now is veterans. Every veteran contract almost gets protested.
Okay.
Okay. That's happening, that's killing contracts. because they can't move forward, but they still have to spend the money. So when it gets close to the end of the fourth quarter, what they do is they just kill the contract. So it's a lost opportunity, and they spend the money someplace else. The number one killer for groups not getting their start is protest.
Okay.
And it's becoming very common for those sectors. For women and veterans are the two most common. And so that's what chews it up. So that's what sits here and makes contracting officers, so I want to go through this, because as soon as I get a protest, I can't do nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what's weighing, because they have a limited time, because you gotta remember, this budget's supposed to be ready in 1 October. We're typically getting it in April. And we gotta spend that money from April to September 30th. We're not getting a full year. And that's the battleground that these contracting officers are dealing with. And that's why we sympathize with the contractor. We sympathize with the businesses that are trying to get the contract, because the money is not flowing like it's supposed to. If it did, it wouldn't be an issue, but it doesn't. And that's what makes it very challenging. The other thing, if you really wanted to look ahead, always look at the budgets being proposed now for next year. That tells you which agencies are gonna gain money. You look to see what you do, and if you do it, that's the agencies you start talking to. What everybody always does, they keep talking to the same agencies, they never pay attention to the budget. The budget says where the dollars are gonna go, but yet you're talking to someone that doesn't have it. Or you're talking to the agency, and you're sitting here saying, I can do this contract. Well, that contract was awarded last year, it's 1 + 4.
Right.
Why are you even talking to them?
Right.
And that's happening all the time too. People just are not doing their homework.
Carl, that's a great point. One of the things that exacerbates this, Jonathan, as you know, and one thing I am adamantly opposed to is Congress's dysfunction with budgeting and appropriations. Every year, it'll happen again this year, we end up with CR. And as you know, everybody goes into mark time with the CR, suspended animation. So if you made a proposal on a contract and the CR comes up, guess what? That contract is not gonna get awarded until you get a full-time appropriations bill. And many times it's a couple of cycles, so many times it's into the following year. So now you've already chewed up 3 months into that budget year. And then these contracting officers are saddled with getting that money out the door. And listen, that's reflected in how they make decisions. So, you know, Carl has been very insightful as to how to do those things. And listen, we're glad to work with you. There are a lot of opportunities out there. Many times it's just being able to navigate, as you said, follow the money, figure out where the demand is, be able to do those things. And listen, we're glad to work with you. Listen, I really appreciate folks' time here. We're gonna have to get things to wrap up. I do wanna make sure too that we have a sidebar. I wanna talk a little bit more on a sidebar here about access to capital, because we work with some organizations, and again, a lot of times you look at it and go, well, that's really not a business, but it really is. And I'll give you a great example. Let's take a church, for example. You know, church struggles to get capital, but they're a business. They have a pastor, they have a staff there, and you don't want to call them customers, they're churchgoers, but essentially they're customers, and they have a capital need and those kinds of things. So what we've done is to say, how do you take that, what is, unconventional, how people view businesses, and how do you make sure that those organizations too have access to capital? So I want to make sure we have a sidebar on that after the effort's over with. But I think there are some opportunities here, what we've heard, Joseph, from what you talked about, and what you talked about, and others, to say how's there a connection there. So I want to make sure we're doing that. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Our panelists, thank you all so much. Extraordinary work. I appreciate what you've done and what you all have done, spending time with us and reflecting your expertise. What an extraordinary opportunity for folks. So, Conway, thank you. Susan, thank you so much. Carl, Joseph, we appreciate it. Jennifer, thank you. We appreciate all the great work that's gone on here. I want to emphasize too, many times folks don't think about the state level because of where we are here regionally, but the state level is incredibly important. What you all do there as a conduit, I think, are things that are incredibly important, not only here, but also at the federal level. So I want to make sure that we emphasize what you're doing and not forgetting that. Jackie, I appreciate all that you do there with VA Workforce Consortium. Wayne, thanks for all that you do with Virginia Community Capital. And Michelle, thanks so much for your leadership there at the Chamber. You're just wonderful. The Chamber does a fantastic job there. And by the way, for anybody that is not a Chamber member in this region And Bishop Dukes, I know you're Prince William, but it's all right, the chamber there. But But anybody that's, I'm gonna put a plug in here, anybody that's not a member of the chamber, shame on you. Now I'm gonna be positive about it. I'm gonna say, not only shame on you, but you have a great opportunity that you're missing. So get in touch with Michelle or Susan there at the chamber and make sure that you join, because it's a great network. And she said over 1,000 members. You won't find any other organization out there that's stronger and helping along the way. So thank you to our panelists.
Can I make
Bishop
mention
Dukes,
of one
please.
thing? Because I just think these forums are just incredible. I want to thank Mary Washington also for sponsoring, but also Congressman. He's done this certainly in Prince William and around the region. And one of the things that I know that he has his sights on is really recovery and restoration. And we've just come through 16 months of just devastation. And I was reading a statistic talk about how like 50% of the restaurants around the country just went out of business. So and we've gone through a lot of different things. You know, it's not only just economic, but it's psychological. You know, it's a whole disruption with the virtual learning of our children to working at home, and so everything is kind of out of sorts. I just believe, and I see it with Congressman Wittman, that this is really a second chance for us to kind of redo the structure of kind of what's out there. And we've worked with the SBA and all, this has really been a great education. I just wish more people that call me and ask me questions were here. And I think that's the issue. If we can bridge the communication gap, work with the Washington Board of Trade, just the conversations that they have, and at the level of conversations that we have here, people need to know. You know, I know they're working in trenches now trying to save their businesses and their whatnot, but this is what we really need to know for a little information. And we got the rocket ship, but we don't know how to fly it. So we need to figure out this part. So thank you for doing this, and I want to be a part of expanding the conversation to see how we can really reach the in the trench business owner and small businesses that really need to hear this. So thank you for doing this.
Bishop Dukes, thank you. You hit the nail on the head. We have recorded this, so we'll make sure we put it out there. We'll make sure we put conduits to everybody here on the panel, so if people have a question that they can get it answered. You're right. I again want to thank our panelists. You won't find a more accomplished and skilled set of experts in the field on how to pursue growing a business, starting a business than this group of panelists we have here. So great resource.
Great chamber here too.
Exactly. Great chamber partners there. So that's great. But again, I want to thank everybody. We will make sure that these resources are available. Our panelists have provided a lot of information to us. We'll make sure that information is available. We encourage folks to reach out to us, and we'll get you to the right place. We encourage you to, if you haven't had a chance to ask a question, if you view this after the time, please send a question to our office. We'll make sure it gets to the right place, or you can contact our panelists directly. We will put this information up on Facebook so you have their direct contact information. But again, I want to thank everybody today in our audience that has joined us. We appreciate, we have some folks here from the Virginia Department of Health. Thank you so much. Go VDH. I'm an alumni of VDH, worked there for a number of years, so I appreciate what you all do. And again, the concept of community health is critically important. Community health has a tie to economic health. So we want to make sure our businesses are doing well, because we know that is incredibly important. So I appreciate Virginia Department of Health's presence here today, for our banking community, for our chamber, for everyone that is part of today, for folks that joined us on Facebook. Thank you all again. Thanks so much for your time. And we wish you God's continued blessings, and I wish God to continue to bless our great Commonwealth of Virginia, to bless our great nation. Thanks again. Thank you.